Welcome to the New Analysis, where we analyze new mons to explain the meta to you. With this episode, we will be analyzing stealth rock setters and spike setters, hazards in general. So, first off, we have Steelix, which is by far the best stealth rocker in the tier. He has a Gargantuan defense, which makes him really hard to take down without coverage. And he has quite powerful stab moves in Heavy Slam and Earthquake, which check a lot of threats in the tier. It also has access to Roar, although most people run Toxic instead. You can also run Dragon Tail, but the chance to miss isn't really worth it, in my opinion. For ability, you will always run Sturdy, and for items, you will either run Leftovers or Agua Berry, or any kind of berry that works like that. I prefer berries, but most people run Leftovers. Next up is Palau Sand, which is quite interesting as it can tank water type moves quite a bit, since most water types in the tier are defensive, or at least common ones. And you always run either Leftovers or Core Blueberry, since Knockoff is really popular. And the moveset is really one-dimensional. Almost nobody runs anything else other than Shore Up, which is pretty much a recover for him. Stealth Rock, Shadow Ball, and Earth Power. You can run defense investments, you can run special defense investments if you're really looking to capitalize on the ability. Yeah, he is pretty tanky, but not as much as Steelix. Next up is Rhydon, which is really good for checking Incineroar other than setting up Stealth Rock. He also has quite a bit of coverage with Mega Horn, Aqua Tail, Avalanche, Fire Punch, Ice Punch, Poison Jab, which can be useful, and Pursuit. So yeah, I'm also Thunder Punch. Yeah, abilities, they pretty much don't exist. He doesn't have many attacks that capitalize of it. Most people run Rock Blast. I have no idea why, since there are very few Pokemon that run Focus Sash in the tier, but I guess it's for Suicide Leads, which are very rare, but Suicide Leads are pretty much the only Pokemon that run Focus Sash. And then Earthquake, obviously. And for item, obviously you run Eviolite. Apparently this is the most common spread. I'm guessing it's to ensure killing Incineroar, since it's like his main niche, but I don't know. Next up is Piloswine, which is one of the best ice types in the tier. It's like one of the 3 relevant ones. He runs Eviolite, obviously. His best ability is Stick Fat, which makes it so it doesn't actually have a fire type weakness, but most people forget about it, so they still trade attack with fire types. I would recommend to run Adamant. Full attack investments is really tanky anyway, so doesn't matter too much. Then for moves, you run Earthquake, Ice Shard, Stealth Rock, and then either Avalanche or Icicle Crash. He is quite good. I ran him a lot. Next up is Druddigon. Druddigon has Rough Skin and Rocky Up. That's his main set, and runs Impish. With full defensive investment, he's a defensive Pokemon. He runs Stealth Rock and Earthquake as main moves, although Earthquake can be swapped out for other coverage, but Earthquake is the best. Then we have Glare, which is pretty much a Thunder Wave that hits everything but Ghost types. It's pretty damn good to hit electric types with it. And finally we have Dragon Tail for switches with Stealth Rock. Last but not least, we have Miltank, which always run leftovers, and then either depending on what you wanna face, you can either run Thick Fat to have more resistances, or run a Sap Sipper to completely wall the Siege and the mice. I mean, not completely, but almost. Then you run Milk Drink for survivability, Stealth Rock obviously, Toxic, and then Body Slam if you run Sip Sapper, Thick Fat, or maybe you would prefer something like Flip Knockoff if you had it, or like something to kill the mice and the CGI, like Fire Punch, yeah. So those are the most relevant Stealth Rockers, but those aren't the only ones. Starting off with Garbodor. Garbodor is the premier Toxic Spike set of the tier. He also has spikes, but it's not really necessary to run him, even though there really aren't too many other options. Like, the other two best things are Pain Split and Drain Punch. Then he runs Gunk Shot for coverage and for killing fairy types, which are becoming more and more relevant. And finally Haze. It has Clear Smog, but Clear Smog can't hit Cling Clang, which is like the most relevant setup sweeper in the tier, arguably. His best ability is Aftermath, and followed by Rocky Helmet for his item. He's a defensive tank, so like run defense. I don't know what those IVs are at top speed, but apparently most people run that. Next up is Frostless. Frostless is one of the premier suicide leads in the tier, with access to spikes and taunt. It's really good. Then it has Destiny Bond, and for the last move you either run Ice Beam or Shadow Ball. It has obviously it's a suicide lead, so it runs Focus Sash, and then the best ability is Cursed Body, because no clock is shit. And you run speed and special attack because you don't really care about tanking kids. You're a suicide lead. That's not what you're here for. Then we have Ferocid. Ferocid doesn't need to run Stealth Rock, but it's good to have. Then you can either run Protect or Leech Seed, then Toxic or Leech Seed, and then either Gyro Ball or Seed Bomb for coverage. Leftovers is the best item, but you can also run Rocky Helmet if you're not running Protect. And then obviously you run Orion Barbs because it's the only item ability he has. And then you run Defense Investment because to capitalize on his ability. One of the key features of Ferocid in this tier is that fire taps are pretty uncommon. The only one that you'll see often is Incineroar, the others are pretty rare outside of Delphox maybe. Next up we have Claydol. Claydol's niche is having Reflect and Light Screen. He's basically like double screen support, and he also has Rapid Spin, which is really good. He also has Stealth Rock. He's not Suicide lead, but he's one of the best leads in my opinion. You run Light Clay to capitalize on those Reflect and Light Screen, but you could run Cold Berry to catch people off guard, even though Claydol is already quite niche. He obviously runs Levitate because he has no other stuff. The other abilities. Then we have Shackle. Shackle is the best sticky webber in the tier because he also has Stealth Rock. He can run Anchor or Toxic or Infestation. Those are the three main moves in the other two parts. Two slots. His best abilities, in my opinion, is Gluttony along with Agua Berry, but you could run Stardy and Leftovers if you want. The investments don't matter too much, but I would recommend Special Defense since most water types are special. Finally we have Uxie. Uxie isn't really that good for most situations. Like yeah, he has psychic and U-turn, and his stats are pretty good, but his main niche is having pretty much every single stat weather and Trick Room. He doesn't have A, but he has Sunny Day, he has Rain Dance, and he has Sandstorm, and he has Trick Room. So in any of these themed teams, he is pretty much a staple. You want to either run Leftovers or Cold Blueberry, and if you're not running him in team, you should run Thunder Wave probably. Next up we have more niches hazard setters. We have Totera, which he's not really niche, but he's not as good as the other setters, and he doesn't necessarily have to run Stealth Rock. His moves are Earthquake, Voodoo Hammer, and then either Synthesis or Leech Seed. And you wanna capitalize on his defense, but you can run Adamant if you want. Next up is Kabutops. Now Kabutops is really interesting. He's a Suicide Lead, and you can see that his special attack is quite lackluster, but most people invest on it because as a Suicide Lead he has Surf, which hits for super effective all the other ones, which are all mostly mostly physical defensive tanks. So having Surf instead of Waterfall or Liquidation is much better. Then you run Stone Edge for coverage, Stealth Rock obviously. Pretty much you wanna go against those Pokemon. Use Stealth Rock, get hit by Weak Armor, so you can you get hit by a physical attack, trigger Weak Armor, which raises your speed, and then sweep or at least kill the opposing lead. He also has Rapid Spin to get rid of the other the Stealth Rock your opponent has set up before dying to the next Pokemon. Next up is Probopass. Now Probopass's main niche isn't really Magnet Pull, although that's a nice thing with Earth Power, it can capitalize on that, but is having a really slow Volt Switch, which makes him a really good pivot to bring out other mons. He also has Stealth Rock, and for last move you can either run Power Gem or Mirror Shot or Flash Cannon, sorry. And for item, Airbound is probably the best item. Next up is Quillfish. Quillfish could be considered water tank, but is not really as tanky as the other water tanks. You wanna run Rocky Helmet as his physical tank, and his main niche is having both spikes and toxic spikes alongside the Destiny Bond and the Taunt. You don't have to run all four of these moves. You probably should run Poison Jab or Liquidation in one of those slots, depending on what you want. I'm just showing you the nice niches it offers. Next up is Livanni and Ariados, which are the two main other Sticky Web setters, but Sticky Web is really not good, I'm just bringing it up here. There's also Cricketon. Basically, their niche is Livanni has actual attack stats and Magic Coat. Ariados has Toxic Spikes, and Cricketune has Taunt. They're not really worth running along over Shackle, but you could. I did in last gen when Defog wasn't that common. They were good. Finally, we have Auroros. Auroros is the other Snow Warning Pokemon alongside Vanilluxe. Obviously, you don't run him outside of Hail Teams, but in Hail Teams you should run Stealth Rock on him. He doesn't have special rock type moves, unfortunately, so he's stuck with like Earth Power. But, you obviously have Blizzard, and you can, instead of Freeze Dry, run stuff like Thunderbolt, which covers the same basis, but obviously because of Stab it doesn't really do as much damage. And these are really up to your choice. Finally, we have entry hazard setters, which aren't limited on having on setting up blocks and stuff. They can, but they don't have to. First up is Lycanroc. and Archeops and Aerodactyl. Or at least their Suicide Lit set, since they have Stealth Rock and Taunt. It's not really too different, aside from Archeops and Aerodactyl having Defog. Yeah, they're okay, I guess. Next up is Mesprit. Mesprit's, this set is basically Uxie's set, but worse. I don't really recommend it. I will probably run a choice item instead. That's like you run Cold Berry, Healing Wish, which pains him, but whatever. And then Psychic and Coverage Wound and Stealth Rock. Next up is Sandslash Alola and Sandflash. Both of them are really good in weather teams, but Sandstorm is quite dead without Gigalith, so I'm only covering Sandslash Alola, since he also has a much better typing. You like run offensive moves, Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin, that's basically his niche. Next up is Diancie. Diancie is one of the best mons in the tier, honestly. But only one of his 3 sets runs Stealth Rock. Which is the lead set, in which runs Diamond Storm and Blast and whatever, Earth Power, Heal Bell, Psychic, doesn't really matter. And then you run Leftovers and Special Defense investments. Next we have Omastar. Omastar is most used as a Shell Smash Pokemon, but he has access to Stealth Rock Spikes and Toxic Spikes. So you can use him for that, and last move is usually Scald. Again, you're better off running Shell Smash, but you can run this. Finally, we have Axelgor. Axelgor is quite weird. He has both Spikes and Toxic Spikes. He always runs Bug Buzz, and for last move you can run like Earth Anchor, Giga Drain, or Acid Fairy or Final Gambit. Doesn't really matter too much. He's basically the fastest Pokemon in the tier aside from Ninjask. Who the fuck plays Ninjask? So yeah, this is the tutorial for entry hazards.